In this program, we have the main class. It has the main method. So this is our main program. And we have a user-defined class that is called T-class. Before we start tracing the program, we need to have a look into the class definition and see what is the data inside, where is the constructor and what does it do, and also what are its methods and what they do. By looking at the user-defined class, its name is T-class. For the data, it has only one private data, which is an integer, and its initial value is equal to 3. Remember that if the data is a private, then when you create an object of T-class, then you cannot access this variable by using dot, even for reading or writing. So it is a private to the class. Now, where is the constructor? This is the constructor. So how did I know that this is the constructor? You can tell that this is the constructor. So how did I know that this is the constructor? There are two things that you need to look for to find out that this is a constructor. First, that the name of the constructor has the same name as the class. Second, it does not retain any value. See the space between public and T-class, there is nothing. Usually we write here the return value, void or integer or double or boolean, but you leave it a space, so that means this is a constructor, and remember that the constructor is called automatically. So you don't use dot to call the constructor. The constructor will be called automatically when you create the object, and then you cannot call it further. So what does it do? It takes an input parameter that is called a, which is an integer. It adds 1 to it and save it into a, which is defined inside the class. What does this keyword do in here? Now, if I don't have the keyword this, then what we will have inside, we will have a equal a plus 1. So the compiler will assume that this a is the input parameter, but not the data inside. So the data inside has the name a, and the input parameter has the name a. So if you want to differentiate between the two, then if you want to refer to a that is inside the class, you have to proceed it by this. And if you want to refer to the input parameter, you just simply write it as it is. So in here, when we say this.a, that means we are referring to a that is inside the class. And here, when we say a without this, that means we are referring to the input parameter. So this constructor, whenever it receives an integer a, it will add 1 into it and will save it inside the data, which is called a. Now, what are the methods? For the methods, we have 4 methods. One is called setNum, that it has input parameter a. It simply copies the input parameter to the data inside. And we have another method that is called getNum. It simply returns the current value of the data inside the class. So the return value is integer. Now for the third method, it returns a Boolean value, and this Boolean value depends on the value of a that is inside the class. If it is positive, greater than 0, then it will return true. If it is 0 or negative, it will return false. So this will test for the inner value of the data, and if it is positive, it will return true, otherwise it will return false. Notice this is not necessary. Why? Because we don't have any input parameter that is called a, so there is no conflicting in here. So you can omit this if you wish, but for clarity, we are including this to indicate that this variable is a data member inside the class. For the last method, it receives a class. It does not receive a simple data or primitive data. It receives an object of the same class as T class. So B is in fact an object that has the same structure as T class. So what does this method do? First, it will take the current value of A, which is inside the class, will add it with the value that is obtained from the method of the object B. And we will show you what is the value of B when we create an object and how this method is going to compute the value of this a.b.getNum and returns it as a return value. So where is the first statement in our program? If you go to main method, as you can see, line 4 is the first statement in our program. So the first line that the computer will execute is line 4. What is happening in line 4? In line 4, as you can see, we are creating an object that is called M1 of type T class. Before you try to call the constructor, you represent this object by a box. So first we are going to draw a box that represents M1, and we are going to label it M1. And what is the data inside the object? We have only one data member, which is an integer, and its initial value is a 3. And again, this data member will be represented by a box inside the object, and we are going to label it A, and the initial value is equal to 3. And then we will go back to line 4. As you notice that the system will call the constructor and will supply 5 as input parameter. Where's the constructor? This is the constructor. In the constructor, we are writing the statement inside the constructor on a single line. The compiler will not complain because we have curly brackets for begin and end of the body of the constructor, and we have one statement inside. So for saving space, I'm writing all methods on single line. So what will the constructor do? As we discussed before, it will add 1 to the input parameter, and the result will save it into the local data, which is A. So what is the input parameter? It is 5. So 5 will be supplied to A. You add 1, it will be 6. So you save it into A. So that means the current value of A inside M1 will change from 3. It will be equal to 6. In the next line, which is line number 5, this is line number 5, we are going to do the same. We are going to create another object which is called M2, and the system will call the constructor, and 2 will be passed as input parameter. So before the constructor is called, we will draw a box again for M2, and we will label this box by M2 to represent the second object. And we have only one data inside this object, which is A, and again we will represent A inside by another box. And the initial value is a 3 when you create the object, but since we are calling the constructor with input parameter 2, so 2 will be copied into A as input parameter, add 1 and save it to 3. So 2 plus 1 is a 3, so the data will not change, it's already equal to 3. So the state of the object will not change, and it will be as it is. Then we will go to line 6. This is line 6. In line 6, what we are doing, we are calling getNum method for M1. So this is M1, so we need to look at the data for M1. We are calling getNum. This is getNum. So what does getNum do? It returns the value of A. And again, don't look for the value of A in the class definition. Look for the value of A from the drawing, from the box that represents the object. So it returns A. It says return this dot A. That means it is going to return 6. And this value, the return value, which is 6, will be saved into a variable that is called X. So we will represent X by another box. And we are going, this is equal to X. Notice we are not using an arrow because this is a primitive data type, and its current value is equal to 6. But for a class-based, we use arrow because M2, in fact, does not hold the data for the object. It holds the reference for the object. Next, we will go to line 7. And in line 7, we are printing. So what we are printing a message, m1.a equal. So here we will have m1.a equal, and we are printing the value of X, and the value of X is equal to 6. So therefore the output will be 6. And since this is a println, then we are going to the next line. Then we will go to line 8. Now in line 8, we are calling a method called setNum for M2. So we are talking about this object. Let us see what this setNum is doing. This is setNum. It receives an input parameter. It simply saves it into A. So whatever you pass as input parameter to this method, it will take it and save it into the local data, which is A. So what is supplied to this method? The supplied value for this method is x minus 5. X is 6, minus 5 is 1. So this one will go to A, and this A will be saved inside. So that means the value of A will change from a 3, it will change to 1. So now we are at line 8. After finishing from line 8, we have an if statement and line 9, 10, 11, and 12, which is if and else. But this depends on the condition inside the if statement. And inside the condition of the if statement, we are calling a method that is called isValid for M2. So we are referring to this object. Where is isValid? isValid is here. As we discussed before, if the local data for the object is greater than 0, it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. So let us find out. So now M2, this is M2. So what is the data inside? We have 1. So is 1 greater than 0? Yes, it is greater than 0. So therefore, the condition is true. So what will happen? It will execute line 10 and it will skip line 11 and 12. So what do we have in line 10? We are setting, or we are calling the method setNum for M1. So this is M1. We are calling the method setNum and we are passing 7 as input parameter. Where is setNum? This is setNum. So we are passing 7. So the value of A is 7. Simply it copies 7 into the local data of M1. So A will change from 6 into 7. After we finish from the if statement, we go to line 13. And in line 13, we have a print. So what do we print? We print the value m1.a equal to, so we have m1.a equal, and then we need to print after that the value of m1.getNum. So we are calling the method getNum for the object m1. So this is m1. So what is getNum? This is getNum. It retains the value of A, so that means it is going to retain 7, and this is what will be the output printed by this statement. After that, we will go to line 14. And in line 14 also we have a print. So we are printing m2.a equal, so this is m2.a equal, and what will be printed after that? It will be m2.getNum. So that is m2 getNum. That means this is getNum. So it is returning the local value of A, which is 1. So the output will be equal to 1. Now for the remaining 2 lines, line 15, we are calling the method compute for M1. So we are talking about M1. So we are calling a method called compute, which is this one. And we are supplying M2 as input parameter. See, M2 is the object. So that means the whole object will go inside M1. The whole object M2 will go inside M1. So that means the value of B, let me write it here. So the value of B will be the object that is have the value A equal to 1. So the value of A that goes inside this method, which is called B, let me label it B. Whenever it goes inside the method, then its data inside A will be equal to 1. So we are passing an object. So what this method is doing, and remember that we are calling compute for M1. So the value of A for M1 is 7. So the value of A is 7. And then we need to know what getNum for this object will retain. So we are calling getNum, which is this one, and again it is returning the local value, so it is retaining 1. So that means the value retained from get1 is equal to 1. And this method is, on the other hand, is going to add 7 plus 1, and the answer is 8, and this 8 as a returned value will be saved into y. So, and again, we are going to have a local variable inside the program that is called y, and its value will be equal to 8. Then we are in line 16, and in line 16, we are also printing. So we are printing the text compute equal to, which is a string. So the output will be compute equal to, and the current value of y is printed. So what is the current value of y? It is 8. So 8 is printed on the output screen. And then after that, the program will terminate, and the output that will be displayed by the program is, as you can see, is this.